Let's bring in famed economist Art Laffer with more on this. Art, you know, you can go back to Ronald Reagan, who said, look, everybody's focused on my tax cuts. Really, my regulation cuts had as much to do with re-energizing the economy. And the reverse can be true with what we're about to see with President Biden, no?
Very true. In fact, you remember when Reagan picked that thing in the book up and dropped it?
Yeah.
We all thought he was going to have a hernia because of that. I mean, like it was 85,000 pounds or something like that. It's great. Yeah. And you look at some of Trump's ones, like the Operation Warp Speed. That was amazing. Transparency. The other deregulations he did throughout the whole process was amazing. But this Build Back Better plan is going to be a catastrophe, I think. I think it'll really cause people not to work. The participation rate will drop even further than it is now, which isn't really, except for the trough of the pandemic, it's at an all-time low, and it will probably go lower, and that means less production. There'll be more demand. You'll get higher prices. You'll get bottlenecks on the West Coast with all the ships trying to come in with the goods that the people are buying from abroad because they aren't producing them here and because they're not working and they're just getting paid to purchase. And immigration, who doesn't want to come into this country now if they get all these freebies? It's just perfect for them. So it's a perfect storm. We're going to see all sorts of problems, my view of the world, David, if this thing passes.
Well, it's it's not just you and me.
It's not going to be a good picture.
It's not just us that's saying that. I mean, there's some Democrats who are saying it as well. We have Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary under Clinton, suggesting that what really scares him is not only the inflationary cost of all this that exists, but it's also the number of bureaucracies that are going to have to be created from start when you're talking about that climate change part of the package. And all of these bureaucracies have this legacy cost. They just go on and on forever. There are very few bureaucracies that self-destruct. Most of them, 95% of them, go on forever.
Yeah, David, it just seems so simple. Let's say you and I agreed that climate change was a real problem and a real threat to the future of the U.S. Why wouldn't you just put on a $5 per gallon gas tax and drop the income tax commensurately, dollar for dollar, so we have a really low corporate tax, we have a high thing, so people use less carbon, but we don't have the depression, the downturn that all of this stuff is going to cause. If you want to solve the climate, just put a carbon tax on, and to keep the economy from tanking, cut income taxes or payroll taxes, just the way Al Gore and I have been proposing for years. Just make it an offset and keep the economy going. I don't see what's wrong with that.
You even have problems with the infrastructure. We shouldn't forget the infrastructure bill, which did pass, of course, last weekend. But that's going to have some problems too. We've been hearing that we're not going to have a shovel-ready project ready until 2023. And all of those. Remember when Donald Trump came into the room and had a chart with all of the regulations that he was going to cut to make it easier to build roads and everything. Well, all those regulations are coming back. And Donald Trump, we were lucky to have a president that understood regulations from a builder's point of view. He knew what stood in the way of getting things done in terms of building things, and that's why he knew where to cut the regulations. Again, this president doesn't have that real world experience.
Yeah. From the standpoint of the economy, Donald Trump was as good as they get. I mean, he was just fantastic. But when you say shovel ready, it reminds me of the Milton Friedman joke. Do you remember that?
Tell us.
In this case, it's going to be teaspoon ready. They're all going to, instead of digging with shovels, they're going to dig with teaspoons.
I don't think
By God, we'll create a lot of employment. We'll go right into depression, but we'll have a lot of people working with teaspoons.
Yeah, well, the thing that bugs me most, and I mentioned this in my opening riff there, was the fact that small businesses are the ones that can least accommodate all these new regulations and new bureaucracies that we're going to see. It's the big corporations, the Amazons, the Facebooks. They can hire the lawyers and the accountants and everything. It's the small businesses, and those are the ones that have been getting killed with all the lockdowns and the vaccine mandates and everything else. They're the ones that are suffering the most. We're going to see this country just be the big guys and the government. That's about it.
But there are going to be some really little agile little guys, too. Just remember, small companies, small cap companies are inflation hedges, tax shelters, and regulatory skirts. And that's what they can do. And they can do that very well in certain circumstances, David. So don't underestimate the small business working right on the fringes of the economy. GE and these other big ones, Amazon and all this stuff, they're so observed, so focused on. But I think some of the small companies, I mean, really small, will be able to do a lot better. For example, a lot of these regulations for board of directors and other types of things will never apply to these companies of 10 people. I mean, if you're fixing
That's
wood
a great
sheds,
point.
You're not having to worry about your board.
We should remember, by the way,
that.
that FedEx and Apple and a whole lot of companies that have become real powerhouses started in that high regulatory environment that we had in the 1970s. So it is possible.
Exactly.
But again, at the same time, you know, you don't want to discourage wealth creation as much as this administration seems intent upon doing. For God's sakes, they're even going to have probably a wealth tax, which has failed just about everywhere else in the world. Unless individuals can build capital, their own personal capital, whether you call it savings or capital, you're not going to have as much of an entrepreneurial environment.
From your lips to God's ears. I mean, this is just exactly correct what you said, David. It's really setting up a very bad environment for a good, healthy economy going forward. And, you know, given how bad the things have become so recently, you're going to get those participation rates dropping further, people withdrawing for the labor force, less production. I would be willing to bet that over the next 5 years, GDP growth is exceptionally low. Yeah. I mean, and we can't afford that in the long term. We just can't.
And by the way, the people that did best during the Trump explosion of economic activity were folks who were the blue-collar workers, real median income among folks who never graduated from high school grew by 9% from 2016 to 2019. It was the lower, whatever indicator you're looking at, it was the lower end of the economic scale that grew the most, so that wealth gap shrunk more during the Trump administration than it did previously or than it's doing now.
And the lowest poverty rates, the lowest unemployment rates for minorities, black, undereducated, Hispanic, the lowest on record, David. I mean, really incredibly wonderful performance he put in there. I mean, it's just, I mean, with these policies that Biden is putting in right now, I mean, you're going to find the people who bear the major brunt of these are the poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised, the undereducated, those people who can ill afford to be taken out of the labor force for a year or two. They forget their skills. They come back. They aren't nearly as good as they used to be, and they will suffer enormously. They're the ones you can't afford to take out of the labor force. They're the ones that Biden is targeting.
The great Art Laffer, who nevertheless is an optimist. He's always an optimist about this great country of ours, and I am too.
You know who the next president's going to be, don't you?
Tell me.
It's not going to be Biden. It's going to be a great president, by the way. I just thought I'd tell you.
All right. Well, we're going to be talking about who might be running for the Democrat side and the Republican side with Charlie Hurt a little later. So that was a nice tease. Art Laffer, good to see you, my friend. Thank you very much.